The experience of the Alliance actually, in my opinion, comes on top, right? And one of the things that I really like about it has been that in my other CEO group, it's all tech executives. So whether we like it or not, we view the world in a certain way. And in my group with the Alliance, I think there's only 2 tech executives, in my group at least. And so you're getting perspectives on how to view and solve and deal with issues from a very different background of understanding that I would normally bring to a problem. And so therefore they're really valuable experiences of my experience at the Alliance. And I had the opportunity to be the person presenting the case in my last meeting. And I have to say, I walked away with a lot of great ideas on things to do or not to do. That in my role, you don't get to talk to many people about them, right? I mean, it's kind of lonely at the top in that regard. But yeah, I think it was actually very helpful from 2 different aspects. One is you stay connected with the business world, which is, I think, important. And for me, I wasn't planning on completing the transaction and then retiring. So I'm certainly. My intention was to go find my next opportunity. And being in the conversations around business, current with the challenges of what other CEOs were looking at was very helpful, number one. And then number 2, I think because of the times, there were a number of CEOs in transition. And there were a couple of events actually that were specifically done for CEOs in transition or executives in transition, where, again, both from a networking perspective, from an ability to look at opportunities, look at who's looking at what kinds of things, was also very helpful. So I guess the most important thing was that during no time during that transition period, I felt like an outsider for not being a current CEO, right? Which I think was also very positive, I think. What I have seen is a really significant orientation to share and to help by the members, which is clearly encouraged by the leadership of the Alliance and the way it's structured. So lots of openness, lots of well-intended, competent advice, where participation is almost a must. I've been in other groups where many people go sit down and go through the meetings as if they were going to the movies, right? They're there to be entertained rather than participate. And whether it is just part of the culture because it's been happening for so long, or I just happen to get a lucky group, I don't know. But the environment is one where you are getting value. I think there's an effort to understand at a fairly personal level what is it that you need. There's an effort to connect you with people who may bring value, and so I see it as a very open and at the same time demanding group, and demanding from the perspective of you need to contribute, otherwise you'll be an outcast in the rest of the group. After joining the Alliance and seeing the amount of work that actually goes into figuring out who should be in it and in what group they belong, at first I didn't know if it was just random. It's like, oh, Jorge, your company is this size, therefore you belong here. So I see also an intention of care that is pretty significant. I would describe it as, really an opportunity. It's like anything else, right? You will get out of it what you put into it. So it's an opportunity for somebody to actually put on the table real issues that you want help on how to think about solving. And then what you will get is hundreds of years of combined experience, we're all old in there, on how to think about your issue, and in many cases also very practical ideas on how to implement certain things that may help you solve that issue. And they tend to be very different than again, going back to my earlier comment, it gets lonely in these roles is, your staff is going to have a very different view than these other executives because they tend to be more functional than broad, and your board is going to have a very different view. And in the alliance, what you get is current, mostly CEOs, at least in our group is all CEOs, where chances are have dealt with or are dealing with or can see similar things that you're dealing with, giving you, advice as unbiased. There's nothing for them to gain in it, and so you get pretty candid advice. And then the group, at least in my group, the environment is such that it's safe to disagree, and so you get very different, broad set of opinions and recommendations, where it isn't like somebody speaks and everybody then, oh yeah, like Jim said, right? I've not seen that happen. So I would describe it as an opportunity to really get excellent help in how to think about your biggest challenges. Now, if you don't want to bring your biggest challenges to the meeting, then you're going to get great help on meaningless problems. So to me, there's my description of the role of the board is the boards are there to mainly ensure that they represent the shareholder. At least in my company, we're a public company, right? And that we're doing things that are in accordance to all the laws. They're not there to manage. They are there to give advice on strategy, et cetera, et cetera. But they descend on the company once a quarter. And in many cases, they're there for a short period of time. Many of the board members have very specific knowledge. In almost every board, I find that the sitting CEOs are the minority, right? And so you have a bunch of very experienced, but mostly either retired or in different industries or whatnot. And there is a common objective of what success means, and so through either multiple board meetings or the fact that we're all looking at the strategy the same way, et cetera, you end up reaching some alignment where I think it's sometimes hard to step out of that perspective and say, well, if I looked at it differently, what would I think, or what different advice might I give you? Versus, I think there's a multiplier effect with the advice from the Alliance, where each one of us has a group similar to the one I just described, who's also giving them thoughts and ideas and insight. And you get the benefit of all of that through the feedback that you're getting from the Alliance members. And I think, again, because all the members are current executives, they're dealing with these things real time rather than on a meeting to meeting basis. So I'm not sure if I'm describing the difference that accurately, because at some level they sound similar, with the exception of there is no vested interest other than to help you get clarity on your issues from the Alliance. He's responsible for actually really orchestrating the meeting and the topics, and I'm also gonna guess that significant part of deciding who is and who isn't in the particular groups, right? So getting the right chemistry, both from the types of companies and personalities and whatnot, into a group that will be then synergistic in a sense. But in the meeting, they're the master of ceremonies, right? They're the ones who are managing the participation, ensuring that somebody doesn't just take over the meeting, or that somebody's not there just doing their emails. And Greg's on ours, and Paul actually goes, I think, to every one of our meetings. And also, if we're getting into the weeds, kind of pulling us all out and going, okay, let's get back on point. There's pretty valuable investment of everyone's time, right? So we basically spend a day once a quarter in these meetings. And given that not every meeting is your own topic, you need to make sure that you're finding value in the topics of others and in your own participation. And I think the directors do a great job of pulling that out of people. And also make sure that the topics are relevant. When I present, I spend a fair amount of time finalizing what the big question was going to be and how to present it and why was it important and how could it be relevant to the others and would I get valuable feedback or not. So I think they're instrumental in making sure the group functions according to the goals. So unless I'm traveling and at a customer, I'll put the alliance at the very top. And again, it isn't that time consuming from the perspective of how much time is demanded or required of us, but the opportunities to actually be able to get somebody to actually really think with you are few and far between, and I think they're tremendously important. And this is why, for me, it is a high priority item. So I won't miss it for any just normal meeting. Now, of course, we're all running crazy schedules in the way we work, and so there will be times when I'll miss it if I'm not in town. Otherwise, I'll make sure I go. It's probably the same attributes that I look for in people who I like to hang out with. So knowledgeable, willing to share that knowledge. But in a way that is, for lack of a better word, in a way that isn't pretentious or a know-it-all or whatnot. The rest of the folks in that room are as successful, in many cases, if not more, and to really be open to exploring the possibilities in the collective discussion. Rather than coming in with, I'm really prepared so I can tell everybody what I think, and then get stuck in that thinking. That I can do without. So folks that are willing to be wrong, and at the same time have a lot to bring to the discussion is what I would like in group members. I have a unique set of experiences that got me to where I am. I have been in several industries, so again, I have a multi-industry background, if you will. And I don't know if this is a positive or a negative, but with the exception of being a CFO or a GC per se, I have actually run every aspect of an enterprise, right? So I have been in R&D. I was a designer when I started. I run R&D groups. I've run sales organizations. I've run service organizations. I've run HR, I've run, IT. So I'm not just a CEO that's had these things report to him, but actually have done them. And so I think it's a pretty well-balanced view of, is what we tend to make requests as CEOs, right? Are our requests reasonable? Are they doable? Are they challenging enough? Rather than it just being academic. And then I've had the benefit of being in very large companies like Hewlett-Packard, where I started my career, or Polymaterials, for example, and then having done 2 startups as well. So I've kind of seen the breadth of multi-industries, and then the same thing from small companies to very large companies, and having that background, I think, is helpful to the Alliance.